Welcome to another episode of the Eric and Mark Show, Playground Rules. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the music industry and its playground antics. You know, you may be a musician listening to the show and thinking to yourself, there are some bands out there that clearly, rock on, dude. They are full of talent, creativity, and deserve to be on the stage. But there are others that you're thinking to yourself, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And for all of you who have been trying to break into the music scene for a fair amount of time, you notice that it's not really about what are they doing that you're not doing. It's about who do they know that you don't know. And that, Mark, is what makes the music industry very comparable to the playground, where being talented is subservient to who is in with the in crowd, who is in with the cool kids. You know, Mark, I've known you for over 20 years, and you are a very talented songwriter, a very talented musician. And I think the listeners, especially those trying to make it in the music business, would benefit from hearing what role the playground rules and antics phenomenon of the music business had on how far you were allowed to get.
So when it comes to the efforts of becoming an aspiring or being an aspiring musician, two main factors come to mind: dominance or dominant personalities and cliques. As far as the dominant personality, it just really seems like there's people that I worked with who came in, a lot of times just new people, and really with not, seemingly any major or unusual credentials, trying to make it just like the rest of us in the band. But they seem to know what to do and tell everybody else what to do. And if you want to know how to make it, then in the music business, then this is what you have to do: A, B, and C. And I was just kind of like, okay, I'm willing to listen, but at the same time, if you seem to have all the answers about how to make it, I was thinking about these individuals. Why haven't you made it yourself? Why are you here with me at this point, an aspiring musician who hasn't made it? I like to think of myself as a pretty talented musician, pretty talented songwriter, humbly speaking. So what was it that they knew that supposedly I didn't know, and why did it seem like we were in the same boat? And so that's as far as the dominance. As far as the cliques, I was just like, okay, so reaching out to a few people through different contexts, different channels, people who are well-established musicians. In fact, in one case is a very well-known band, and who a musician happened to be a part of, and I reached out to them on Facebook, no response. It just seems like a lot of times these quote-unquote elites or these people who have made it stick together, and it's like, what's the big secret? What's the secret? Why are they not sharing their secrets with people overall? It's like if they've already made it, they're already established, then they really have nothing to hide. So why not share with people who they know, like themselves at some point, were aspiring musicians or aspiring professional musicians? What's the big thing here that they're kind of mum's the word on it? And those were two of the biggest challenges that I felt that I faced as an aspiring musician. How about yourself? What have you experienced?
Well, based on what you're saying, it seems like there's a hidden mystery that they don't want to divulge for some reason. But maybe it is that the mystery is that they themselves don't know how they made it. They probably made it because of their personality, because they were able to meet the right people. We need to not look any further than the rotation of music on the radio. So I've been playing music since the 90s. And I've noticed that the same music you heard in the 90s on the radio is the same music you hear today. So it's almost like the system is not designed for new talent to arise. The system is in place only allowing those currently considered the cool kids to continue to flourish. We have kind of a mystique about it where you've heard stories or legends about how there was a record executive from Tennessee on their way in their car on a trip to Florida, and they get tired, so they stop at a restaurant or a bar and grill for a whiskey and maybe a meal, and there's a local band there, and somehow sparks fly, magic happens, and they get signed. And I think a lot of musicians chase that unicorn, and that's, in my experience, not how bands have gotten signed. I've heard of several bands that were able to network through their personality and get to know people and be liked, not because of their character, because of their talent necessarily, although some were talented, others were not as talented as others. But the way they got signed was not how legend tells it. In their unique scenarios, which I'm willing to bet that a lot of it happens this way, and not according to legend, is they knew the record executive. So they would call the executive and they would say, we're going to be playing at this bar and grill. And they would basically get all their friends there and maybe pay some people to come to make the stage look live. And the record executive that they called to come watch the show would come watch the show. But in reality, we see that it's prearranged. There was no magic really about it. So I'm not saying that bands have not had magical stories, but it seems like it is less magical than would meet the eye. So that's been my experience. I really haven't seen, just like on the playground, how good you are at playing soccer or hockey or whatever the playground sport is. That does not matter as far as the opportunity to be able to play or the opportunity to be included or the opportunity to be selected. It's largely in measure of if you are known and liked by the playground executive. And I think the music industry is no different.
And speaking of executives, and this is again, distinction between an executive by title versus an executive by role. You and me happen to know a executive, well, at least one, the same guy back in the day, and he seemed like he was there to. I won't mention him by name, but it seemed like he was there to help us. But at the outset, but then after that, he wanted to go ahead and talk to individual members of the band separately, and to kind of decide what they want and that kind of thing. And it just seemed like it was almost like a divide and conquer kind of approach. And he offered to be our manager and that kind of thing. And I just really wondered about that. Like, what is it that drives people to behave that way? Is he trying to go ahead and trying to figure out whether this is worth his time? Is he as you alluded to, the executive or the dominant personality? Is he power hungry, where he likes the divide and conquer concepts? Like, what do you think about people like that who come in and say, "Oh, hey, I'm a retired executive with such and such company. I've got connections. You've got talents. You can go somewhere, stick with me, just do what I say." And then after that, you realize that said person is either intentionally or unintentionally causing a rift between you and others in your same band or whatever.
Well, it could be that a lot of times people do not want to make investments in groups, not just bands, but in groups of people. They want to isolate the personalities that they feel they can work better with or work best with, or isolate the personalities they think will be more cooperative with them than others. And a lot of times, people that are very talented aren't very cooperative. And so that may be kind of a disincentive for somebody looking to help others, which in most business, people don't help others as a matter of charity. They normally help others because they want to help themselves. So it could have been, in this instance, and probably many of its like, where the person was not interested at all in helping the band succeed, but they wanted to try and isolate the individual personalities they felt that they meshed the best with, and then try and make a music career out of that.
So the personalities they meshed the best with, but maybe they thought that those certain members of the band were more talented than others, or what they were doing was more marketable, kind of thing. You think that factors into too as well? Just like, I want to work with if you got a 5-person group, I want to work with the 2 most talented members, and kind of like everybody else can kind of take a hike, right?
Yeah, well, oftentimes it's not really the best. It's the person that has the strongest personality that's going to seem like they're the best. And so a lot of times also something unique to very talented people is they're quiet. So they're going to appear like they have nothing to say or nothing of value to say. And because of that, they're not going to stand out to the executive in the room whether that is self-imposed title or the actual executive. And so they're going to think that the people that speak the loudest are actually the ones in charge, in charge of the vision, in charge of the mission. And, kind of changing gears, I think one of the luckiest musicians on the planet is Ringo Starr, for example. I think, a little bit about the Beatles, and not putting on the spot, hopefully, but how do you think Ringo Starr was able to get the opportunity he got to be a member of the Beatles?
Well, I'm going to guess that he was he was probably friends with the guy, and Ringo sometimes amongst musicians kind of takes a little bit of a beating or whatever. But I actually like Ringo. I like Ringo, his harmonies. I like Ringo and his taste specifically for the Beatles music. I'm not sure he would have worked out with another band, but I do like what he did with the Beatles because I think it fit in very nicely. But at the same time, I'm going to guess that he probably no John Bonham or anything, or Stuart Copeland, John Bonham of Led Zeppelin, or Stuart Copeland of the Police. I'm going to guess he probably knew those guys. He probably went to school with them or something.
So he was probably a less dominant personality, but he had the personality that he got along well with others. And I guess maybe what you're saying, on those reasons, he was allowed to be included in that project.
Absolutely. So that makes an interesting point. Kind of like then what we talked about in one of our previous podcasts. Kind of like less talented players, for example, on a hockey team might still be included because they're good team players. They have the right personalities. So, or like you said, character, the distinction between character and personality. So what ends up happening is that maybe Ringo is really, at the end of the day, has been known as a character guy and good enough of a musician or good enough of interpretation to go ahead and be successful in his own way and to mesh well with other guys. And that's what allowed him a full career of success with such a prominent group, and even a solo career after that, which I haven't really followed, but my understanding is he's had some success with that solo career as well. And I think it's the same thing on the hockey teams. Sometimes they'll go ahead and maybe find a player who's a little bit of a better scorer, or a little bit of faster skater, that kind of thing. But then they'll be like, hey, you know what? I might opt for the guy who's not as fast or is not as good of a scorer, but he's more of an energy guy, he's more of a character guy, more of a team guy, and he just fits well into the bigger plan. What do you think about that?
Do you think that it would be accurate to say that musicians, once you reach a certain skill level, you should probably focus less on becoming better at your craft and focus on being better at networking? Because that seems to be, where the victory comes in. And additionally, it seems like, just like in sports teams, you have the stars and you have the role players. So maybe Ringo Starr was just an excellent role player.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I couldn't have said it better myself. Ringo Starr is the ultimate role player because I think that what he does, even though by most standards of drummers, percussionists, he wouldn't be considered one of the top ones per se in terms of his quote-unquote chops, but he definitely was the ultimate role player for the Beatles, and he did his role extremely, extremely well, and that's why he's very, very deserving of respect. You went ahead, you go ahead and you bring in a drummer who was much more talented than him, or a much wider skill set, but who overplayed on a lot of the Beatles. If he had overplayed on a lot of the Beatles tracks, that person wouldn't have been successful. They say, hey, you know what? You got to go ahead and just kind of scale it down. Don't overplay. So I think that Ringo very well, in terms of playing a role, good taste. I think good interpretation of the music, and I think it worked out just fine. I think that with the drummer for the Beatles, I think that in that case less is more. But at the same time, one more point I wanted to make is that still did some really interesting stuff. I think it was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. He went ahead and he used some really interesting techniques that have been used to this day, including putting towels over the drums to alter the sound and that kind of thing. And I think that they call that dampening or something similar like that. I don't remember the terminology off the top of my head. It's been a few years, but yeah, absolutely. I think that good taste, good interpretation, professionalism, the right personality, accepting your role, much like Ron Harper on the championship Chicago Bulls, that takes a person very far. What are your thoughts on that?
So this show is not only about pointing out some of the flaws and shortcomings of the system, but hopefully having some takeaways, some solutions, or some perspectives. It seems like a lot of musicians spend insurmountable amounts of time trying to be the next Eddie Van Halen, the next Neil Peart. People on the playground try to be the next Belair, the next Wayne Gretzky. And people at the office, think that if I can just get this next degree or next certificate, it's going to get me in the running for the next good position. But then you have songs like the Macarena that come around. While a very clever, fun tune, if you compare it to the musicianship that I just mentioned, it pales in comparison. So is it potentially surmisable to say that musicians are probably led on the wrong path, maybe because of marketing and social media, that you really don't have to be as good as the industry is saying you have to be successful? It's more about being liked and being fun, maybe.
Absolutely. And there are marketable personality qualities or character qualities I think that someone has. For example, and these are not necessarily qualifications, but let's say with Dennis Rodman of the Bulls, not necessarily, very good basketball player in his own right, especially as a good defender. I never thought he was a great offensive player, but he had a role with the team. But look at that colorful personality, always some kind of unpredictability, and colorful, I mean, in the literal sense of it seemed like every game he had a new hair color. We went from green to blonde to purple to pink to all kinds of stuff. And the thing is that he entertained people, even people who were not basketball fans, or were very casual fans at best, to know exactly who he was. So it's just like, I think that I don't necessarily think there's nothing wrong with coloring somebody's hair, but at the same time, I don't think that doing so speaks one way or another about somebody's character. It's neither a good thing nor a bad thing. It's just what they choose to do. But at the same time, the colorful personality seemed to get him some accolades, and made him popular with fans and that kind of thing, and popular even to this day. In recent years, he's been in music videos and that kind of thing as a supporting actor. So I was surprised to see him, but there he is. So, like I said, sometimes somebody's personality, even though it should not necessarily be considered a part of merits, it becomes a selling point, and people end up knowing about this person, and this person draws a following, and especially now with social media, it's like, oh yeah, you're going to go ahead and have all these followers of this person. Another guy that I think of is Machine Gun Kelly, who's with Megan Fox, and he's I don't consider his music to be anything that outstanding. I mean, he's okay, some of his tracks, but here he is, he's with Megan Fox, he's got all these tattoos, again, nothing wrong with tattooing, all these earrings all over the place, colors his hair and that kind of thing. He's loud, he's eccentric, and that probably makes him as successful as anything he's ever done musically. Now, it sounds kind of cynical, but that's the way I see the guy. No disrespect intended. What do you think?
So I guess as a disclaimer, in retrospect, I can totally understand now how personality should win the day, because it's entertainment.
Yes, sir.
But bringing it back to the theme of the show, personality should not be as big of a factor as we have talked about in previous episodes when determining who deserves promotion, who deserves a specific assignment, who deserves specific off days, who deserves being included. So if you could start all over again in your quest to make a career out of music, knowing what we now know about the playground rules and their antics, how would you have changed your approach?
I would have, I like to think, humbly speaking, that I'm a decent-looking guy and everything, but at the same time, I would have focused a heck of a lot more on vanity. I would have focused more on vanity. I probably would have been more narcissistic in my approach. I would have probably, more than being content, being a side guy in certain projects, even though I went on to my own solo project later, I would have kind of tried to push my way to the front more. I think that being that guy that everybody came out to see would have been, made a difference. But at the same time, it depends on the situation, because I would want to be that guy that people came out to see, because that provides a level of affirmation for any aspiring artist. However, if the projects that I was in were more successful in the traditional sense, even though we did reach a certain degree of success, then I would have been fine as a role player. I was okay with that. Yeah, of course I liked the attention a little bit and everything, but the truth of the matter is I was fine with having somebody else as the front man, at least for that stage of my career. And then I would have been fine as a role player on a winning team. So it's kind of like either somebody finds a role as a role player on a winning team, like a Ron Harper or a Dennis Rodman, or Dennis Rodman is the glorified role player because he's so incredibly colorful. Or if they can't find that winning team or that winning formula, then they go ahead and they kind of push their way to the front and say, okay, well now it's my turn to go ahead and take the reins and show people what I can do. See me and hear me in every way possible, and at the end of the day, hopefully you'll love me. And I think that's probably what I would have. That's probably what I would have done differently. I probably would have been a little bit louder in my presentation, both literally and metaphorically. What would you have done differently?
Well, I guess to tie in also to the theme of the show, on the actual playground in school, you kind of have limited options, right? There's no other playground to play on. You either want to play or you don't. So you're kind of forced to fit in. And sometimes, I guess, find yourself at odds with yourself and wanting to be somebody different to be accepted. I guess one of the luxuries with retrospect is that on the playground of life, you have more options. And I think a lot of times people get lost in corporations or organizations or even bands trying to make the project work, trying to fit in, even though maybe personalities aren't meshing well or writing styles aren't meshing well or musical themes aren't meshing well. So I guess what I would have done differently and what I am starting to do differently professionally is identifying what my goals are, working on myself, and I guess now that we know about the playground rules, I'm able to, I guess, more easily identify when organizations are running like a playground and making sure that I am proactive of getting out once I recognize those characteristics. So I guess the short answer to that question is stay true to your initial objective. And I'm not saying be a gypsy, but definitely in staying true to yourself, always seek projects that are going to allow you to be yourself. And the second you see that they're not allowing that, it kind of defeats the purpose.
I like that statement there a lot. And my message to aspiring musicians out there would be, if you're in a project where the dominant personality or the executive or the so-called leader, again, I'm speaking about fellow musicians here, because if there's a manager, then obviously that changes the situation. Hopefully that manager is appointed or democratically elected, or it's unanimous vote decision. Everyone feels comfortable with the manager. But if you have a leader, let's say among the musicians in the group, then ask yourself: has this leader been self-imposed? Is this a person a leader by example? Is this person a leader because they're louder than everyone else, both verbally and with their instrument, any number of things. So, again, I like your point about, make sure that you feel comfortable with your role in said project, but make sure that you feel comfortable with the leader too. Remember, when you're in a project, you're in that project, a music project, voluntarily. And if you feel comfortable, if you feel good about where the project is going, and the leadership within the project, then go ahead and give it a chance to succeed. See where it goes and everything. It's a journey, so enjoy it. Enjoy making the music and enjoy the different stops in the tour. But at the same time, if there's somebody who's making you feel uncomfortable, or is making you feel like you have to sacrifice a part of yourself and who you are, if there's somebody in the project who's making you feel kind of threatened or demeaned, or they're threatening, or they're kind of making you feel like, oh yeah, well, hey, we're probably gonna end up replacing you because you're not up to par, that kind of thing. Especially if that person is a new person in the band, be very careful of new personalities, and don't let anybody push you around on the playground, is my message.
Cool. So in closing, it seems like it's loud and clear that playground rules and antics are pretty much here to stay for the next foreseeable future. So at best, all we can do to be proactive is to, now that we know it exists, or they exist, once we have identified that it exists in the project we're in, we need to be proactive in getting out. Because if you stay in a situation where you're not able to be yourself, you're not able to project what you have to offer, then you're wasting your time.
Absolutely. And I would encourage everybody to speak up. Speak up if somebody, like we've been talking about other shows, somebody's pushing you around on the actual playground at school, go ahead and speak up. Tell somebody about it. Don't hold it within you, because that just turns into pain and, having a chip on your shoulder and vices later. I know that from personal experience with some other people that I know. If it's in a professional situation, again, it turns into a level of resentment or bitterness towards the company, towards the manager. Speak up. Hey, I've been here for a certain amount of time. Some people are non-confrontational. They don't want to do that. They're waiting for their boss to approach them. Speak up. Say, hey, listen, I deserve to get, I deserve that promotion. I deserve that raise. And I deserve some recognition. And the same goes for music projects. Make sure that you're heard. If you're the kind of person who's happy with that role, where you're just kind of comfortable smoking a cigarette, doing whatever you're doing, and chilling in the background, and you want to let the other guys lead up front, hey, you're allowed to be yourself. But if you want to go ahead and have more of a voice, and you feel like your voice is being suppressed by the more dominant personalities in the project, in the band, and you just feel like you're not able to be yourself, you're not able to enjoy music, making music, performing music on the level that you want to, remember, you're under no obligation to be there. You're either heard and they accept what you have to say and try to be, of course, polite and diplomatic about it, constructive about it. But if you feel like you're not being heard, even after that, after doing your best, after doing your best to make it work, then just like a relationship that's not working, where people take on sometimes borderline toxic roles, go ahead and move on. It's okay to break up. It's okay to move on if you're not getting what you want out of it, and if you're not getting the respect that you deserve, and if you're not playing the role that you want to play. That's how I feel about it.
Cool. And lastly, we've talked about playground rules in all of our episodes. That is the theme. Talked about relationships, talked about business, talked about the actual playground, sports, and now music projects. And while the genesis of playground rules is multifaceted, we're seeing that it ends up in the same result. In a situation where your voice is not accepted or welcome, and your vote is vetoed before it's made.
Absolutely. We see exactly the same thing, see those kinds of trends in pretty much every walk of life, and it's important to identify them, spot them, and then you can cope with them. And sometimes you just need to vent, talk to people like us. You vent to us, we'll vent back to you, and we'll give an opportunity, and we can all get through this together. Because Like you said, the playground rules are going to be here for a while. The playground phenomenon is going to be here for the foreseeable future, and hopefully we can influence people enough to go ahead and through different amounts of time and through as the generations pass to say, hey, there's a different way that we can live. There's a different way that we can think. And let this whole movement and this effort that we're making, these dialogues that we're having, let them all inspire us.
Another way of saying what you just said, they vent, we all vent. Together it is a joint venture.